people of many years ago were also warning that there was a conspiracy to destroy a normal, happy society. And it was at that point that I began to realize that, no, it wasn't my imagination. I was able to see for myself what was happening and analyze it. And Ted Gunderson was one of the other people doing it. When you go down this path, of course, the minimum you can see is that the ideology that you're up against is very cold and callous. It's prepared to destroy things, destroy families, destroy the poor, allow people to die in hospitals. So the minimum is it's very cold and calculating. My journey led me to realize that something very, very nasty was happening with children in this country and indeed overseas. And then when you get into that, you suddenly reach a whole new level of what nasty means. And my own research, the people I have talked to, totally independently of anything that Ted Gunderson might have said or other people, led me to discover that there were people whose beliefs were clearly not Christian, were not any other nice established religion. These were people who believed in something very, very sinister and dark. And the fact they believe in what they do is the important thing. We can make a decision, well, what they believe in doesn't have any sense, it doesn't have any power, power. But if they believe it and are prepared to act on it, then we have a problem.
I mean that these points that related to 220 years ago, that the plan at that time, the intention was that this was not just going to be a takeover of the people of the UK, because at that time the population of the UK was probably very nominal, because of most of these properties in the UK built in the 1900s. But I think he meant international. I think this trading was going on internationally, and I think because of the Commonwealth countries were being occupied at the time, so I think this was, and in light of the New England Company that was set up in 1649, which is on the website newenglandcompany.org, and that's now a philanthropy organisation that's funding charities via the Charities Commission, and the documents that I found were relating to their inception in 1649 under the guise of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So at that time, Jesus Christ was not, wasn't any reference to any Bible, but it was that it was a gospel. So I wonder if that's where the Christianity hatched as well.
Well, I certainly agree that this thing leads you to the fact that the overall objective is to establish a one world government, and I think this becomes more and more visible at the moment, because if we follow where that one world government might be in visible terms, I accept there's things going on in the background we can't see, but of course the visible takes us to the United Nations. And it's absolutely easy to prove that it's UN policy that's now flooding into to countries across the world. The UN is getting involved in the economy. It's getting involved, particularly in education. They're very interested in children, and we are now at the stage in this country where UN directives are coming straight into the public sector. They're not even going through government. Once we get into an area like Agenda 21, it becomes very clear that they are not there for the health of the general population, because they are pushing very hard for massive population reductions, and combined with the reintroduction of wilderness areas, where there are some very good maps on that in America, the objective is to drastically reduce the population. So in my mind, it is very clear that the overall objective is one world government. The UN is a very big stepping stone on that. but I think it's also been significant and probably ties in with your company better, Nilu, if we recognise that you can still see many documents where this nation boasts about the power of the Commonwealth and how many countries are in the Commonwealth, and that the Commonwealth system is another route to world government.
Andy, have you got any questions or feedback from that? I think they're referring to this one world government as a satanic control, aren't they? Which is against the people. I gather that the Satanists were planning to take us over.
Oh yeah, the satanic side.
Policies.
Yeah, I was thinking about Mike Barker, though. He was saying that one world government would be better for all of us. And of course he's against Satanism and all that, but I'm not sure what he meant. But yeah. No, I haven't got any real questions. I mean,
if you look back over the years, there's never been any willingness for the Catholic Church to investigate accusations of abuse. There have been people who've been taken out of position and moved to another country even to get them out of the heat, but there's never been any full and in-depth investigation. And the same thing we've seen from the Church of England. If an extremely good book to read is Teresa Cooper's book, Pinned Down, when she describes the abuse that she suffered with other young ladies, but also a few boys as well, in the Church of England home, where they were drugged unconscious, sometimes for days at a time, and abused. And when Teresa Cooper got out, she researched, she got the evidence. They even got medical records showing these huge amounts of drugs being administered. And despite all of the medical evidence and testimony of other victims, there was no police investigation. And ultimately, she had to fight a civil action over many years to actually get any compensation out of the church at all. So, most Christians in this country would think, oh, well, if you go to the church and say something's wrong, they're going to bend over backwards to help. They did the exact opposite. And I think that the established churches in this country, all of them, doesn't matter what denomination, have all been infiltrated with something which is pretty unpleasant.
Yeah, the funny thing of this is, and this isn't my comment that I've just sent to Nilu, but the funny thing is, church is supposed to be the place, to pray to your Creator, whoever they are, to pray for forgiveness, to pray for support when you need it, to, do this and do that, help the homeless. In other words, it's probably the biggest organisation in the world that can actually do the good things for people. 'Cause it's been around for centuries, but it's the only organisation that covers up the most, horrific crimes. It doesn't make sense, but I guess though in the Bible it does say that Satan's always going against God and Jesus, so I guess it is a fight of the wills between the two, and yeah, don't know. I'm gobsmacked. And Neely, any comment?
Yeah, I heard a few comments. The point about the drugs, now being able to give these drugs to knock children out unconscious, and even parents who are in hospital giving birth, mothers. We had one mum, she won't mind me saying so, she was actually kidnapped and put in a hospital at 8.5 months pregnant, and she didn't even remember that she had been pregnant until she got a letter 5 days after the birth that we've got your baby. And she said she'd been a nurse learning to be a nurse. That wiped out the whole memory. So the kinds of drugs they use are memory loss drugs, and even with children, what kinds of drugs they use are, if they would be, you'd be locked up if you even had them on you normally. So we've got serious issues about the two parallels. We've got the crimes, the criminal, the public service actually doing these crimes against the most vulnerable people. And we're talking about a satanic structure of public service that controls the public service and sidesteps good people in public service and promotes the worst public servants to the highest level. So we've got an extremely dangerous public service, and this is why, until we realize that is the satanic cults that are operating, that are running our country, and it all starts with babies, it all starts with children, because they have this is their army of the future. And if we can stop the recruitment of babies and children into these cults now, we could save them, and this is where the forced adoptions and care system leads us into. And then the police service is involved as well. We know they're implicated in these crimes, actually participating with rapes of babies and children in schools and churches. So there was other things I picked up on these finders, Brian. The finders, we probably got finders in the UK as well at the moment. They kind of use good people as beehives to collect whistleblowers and good activists. That point they said in there, Ted Gunderson said that we will destroy anyone who stands up and is good. So good people have been destroyed, and that issue is like so blatant now. It's manifested so badly that people are like thinking, well, who's going to come and save us?
Well, ultimately, it's got to be ourselves. But if we recognise that we've got a problem that's spiritual, we could have a very long talk on this, but we could do it a bit tonight. Is if we recognise that we're up against very dark powers in high places, then ultimately we also have to look for spiritual solutions. It's not enough to see what we can do. I'm going to say I am a Christian. If I look at simple teachings in the Bible, it tells us that who rules the earth? That Satan rules the earth. And the fact is that this world is not a nice place. It could be so much better. We should be helping each other. We should be doing all sorts of things. But the biblical guidance is that Satan is loose on the earth. And we take a step further and say there are people that believe that Satan is the right person to worship. And then life starts to become extremely interesting, because things that we could consider bad or horrific or unthinkable suddenly become possible. And I have no doubt now that this is actually what we're up against. We're not just talking about criminals in government. We're not talking about perverts in government. We are talking about behind them a set of people whose values are 180 degrees out from what most of us would say is remotely acceptable. These are thoroughly despicable people, the people who will create a war so they can make profit from it and rejoice in the deaths because that's what they do. So I think there's just so much evidence to say that there is something extremely nasty at work at the moment. And if you want to fight against these sorts of powers, where anybody who puts their head above the parapet is going to be attacked, undermined, character assassinated, then you've got to get into a pretty strong state of mind. And I think that it's the spiritual place is where you need to go.
Yeah, Brian, I would comment firstly on what Neely said about the finders. It's a bit like Neely, the bees are looking for the honey. That's it. And then what Brian just said, I think the only way around this is to be mentally strong, like he said, or pray like mad, and hopefully your God. I say it like that because everyone's got a different God: Christian, Muslim, Hindu, and so on. Some people don't believe in any of that, but they believe in their own creator. So I kind of make it easy to say your creator. It's polite then. So you have to pray, I think, like mad, and But that's the whole good thing about the energy and the spiritual world. The more good people pray and do this, you don't even have to believe in prayer. You just, look up to, or you don't even have to look up to the sun or the stars. You just sit there and just wish for something good to happen. And if there's a million people doing that in every area, that would be fantastic. And while we're at it, we haven't had a comment yet from our good friend Kevin Edwards. What do you think so far, Kevin, to what we're saying to solve this problem?
It's fascinating what's being said, and I agree with everything that's said. But, we are in a spiritual warfare. We are in a war, and it is of a spiritual nature. I agree with what Brian's saying, that currently Satan has control of the world, but that is written in Scripture. But, one thing we have to remember is it's only temporary. God will take control, and God has given us a guarantee that we will win. And I believe that is happening. Now, I honestly feel myself, being a Christian and a fairly spiritual chap, that I sense a great spiritual awakening that's happening. It might be pretty slow, but don't forget, when Satan, it's a game of chess that we're playing. It's a spiritual game of chess. When Satan makes a move, God makes a move back. God is in control of everything. And that's where we have to keep our faith on. We're not fighting lost causes. It might be frustrating. It might be draining to a lot of people, but we have to keep the spirit and we have to keep the faith, because the ultimate promise is that God will be victorious and Satan will be defeated. And I'm actually beginning to see